So when we discuss the significance of Stalin today, we have to remember that in Britain, most young people, and most people in fact, don't know a thing about him. They think they do, they think they know lots of things about him, but by and large all they can repeat is buzzwords: purge, gulag, Holodomor. If you actually try and discuss it with them, they fall flat. People who supposedly studied Soviet history from age 13 to age 18 completely cannot argue when you actually try and discuss serious elements of Soviet policy with them. And they cannot give any evidence of the crimes that they accuse and condemn Stalin for. The reason for this is that if the schools were to actually teach about Stalin, young people would soon realise that he was one of the greatest allies young people have ever had. You just have to look at what we stand for and what he stood for. Young people are most affected by unemployment and underemployment. 10.4% of young people not in education are unemployed in Britain, and that's just the official statistics. It does not include underemployment, which is a plight that drives many young people to the brink of starvation, cannot afford their rent, cannot afford food, cannot afford to live. We are fighting for employment for all. Who else fought for this? Joseph Stalin. Young people are fighting social segregation through private and grammar schools, where those who can afford to pay receive a better education. We are fighting extortionate university fees designed to keep working class people from attending higher education. Who else fought for free universal education? Joseph Stalin. Young people are fighting to keep free healthcare, to keep healthcare as a fundamental right. We are fighting against the nightmarish insurance system of the United States being implemented in Britain. Who else fought for free healthcare for all? Joseph Stalin. Young people are fighting against racist and sexist discrimination in society. Where despite all our lip service to equal rights, the vast majority of top jobs are still held by white men, and white men on average receive a higher wage than any other group. Who else, a member of an oppressed ethnic group, fought for equal opportunity for all, regardless of race, ethnicity or gender? Joseph Stalin. I can go on for a while if you want, but I think I'll stop now. This is why it's so important to the bourgeoisie to keep the propaganda machine running smoothly, and this is why it is targeted especially at young people. When I was in year 8, just 13 years old, we read Animal Farm in English. We were told, in English lessons, not we obviously in English. We were told that the mean pig attacking the noble pig was biting commentary about the evil USSR and complex problems in its leadership. What they don't tell us is that George Orwell never visited the USSR, and as far as I can tell, he never even talked to any Soviet citizens. They don't tell us that the book and the films that followed it was financed by MI5, the CIA and BBC. Animal Farm is an important read, but not for exposing the USSR, but for exposing British propaganda about the USSR.
Yeah.
Who else were we recommended? Oh yeah, Alexander Solzhenitsyn, the monarcho-fascist arrested for spreading Nazi propaganda. Apparently, he was a soldier for freedom and justice. I'd like to read a Solzhenitsyn quote out, just to demonstrate this to any young fans of him who might see this. You must understand, the leading Bolsheviks who took over Russia were not Russians. They hated Russians. They hated Christians. Driven by ethnic hatred, they tortured and slaughtered millions of Russians without a shred of human remorse. The October Revolution was not what you call in America the Russian Revolution. It was an invasion and conquest over the Russian people. More of my countrymen suffered horrific crimes at their bloodstained hands than any people or nation ever suffered in the entirety of human history. It cannot be understated. Bolshevism was the greatest human slaughter of all time, and this bit is the important bit. The fact that most of the world is ignorant of this reality is proof that the global media itself is in the hands of these perpetrators. Perpetrators in control of global media. I wonder who you could mean by that, Alex. It is important too to make sure that everything bad that is possible to happen was committed by Stalin. He committed genocide, he hated minorities despite being one, he killed all his rivals, he murdered indiscriminately, he ate all the grain, he paid all the clouds not to rain. Our media and education system's hearts are ready to bleed for all those poor gulags and the land and slaves taken from them. Sorry, I get tearful. Truly awful. What we all, and young people especially, need to remember is that the West doesn't give a shit, pardon my language, about genocide unless it can use it to serve a purpose. Everyone knows about the Holocaust, and rightly is condemned for the monstrous crime it was. We know in detail about the atrocities committed by the Nazis. Similarly, everyone seems to know about the Holodomor, a genocide that didn't even happen, and in fact originates in Nazi propaganda, because it was supposedly committed by the West's greatest ever enemy, the USSR. Do you think that most people would have heard about the Holocaust had Nazi Germany been on our side? How many people in the West know about the genocide of hundreds of millions of Native Americans and Native Australians? Hell, America has a Columbus Day, they have a Thanksgiving. We don't condemn them for this, most people don't at least.
We are African, and we happen to be in America. We're not American. We are people who formerly were Africans who were kidnapped and brought to America. Our forefathers weren't the Pilgrims. We didn't land on Plymouth Rock. The rock was landed on us.
King Leopold II, a man who murdered 15 million Congolese people for private gain, is still seen as a hero in Belgium, and we still have statues up in Britain of him. I mean, they stand today in universities. In fucking African studies courses, they have Leopold II statues. It's awful. Oxford University's most prestigious scholarship is the Cecil Rhodes Scholarship, named after a mass murdering white supremacist who led the charge in the colonisation and enslavement of southern Africa. We even had the audacity to name places in these abused countries after Cecil Rhodes. Rhodesia is an obvious example, which is quite relevant at the moment, I think. You know, we must remember as young people that talk of genocide is always done to serve a propaganda purpose. And we must be critical of claims from the West. With the Holocaust, there's lots of evidence. It is well documented, and we know it to be a true atrocity committed. But talks of Soviet genocide are loads of hot air. Trace the claims back, and you'll find they originate in either the CIA or Nazis. Joseph Goebbels. I've talked quite a bit about the condemnation of Stalin in the West. It seems to me as more and more young people become anti-capitalist, although not explicitly communist, that Joseph Stalin is the final mental barrier that young anti-capitalists need to overcome. Lots of young anti-capitalists love to wax radical about how much they hate capitalism and desire its end, and yet they condemn Joseph Stalin for actually taking measures to do this. Young anti-capitalists talk a lot about how much they hate their bosses. And yet when Joseph Stalin suppresses these capitalist bosses, they're quick to condemn him. It's a total false consciousness, a total paradox. This is indicative, in my opinion, not of them being infiltrators or wreckers, or whatever, but of them still having this lingering petty bourgeois prejudice, which is no surprise given the mass propaganda we are taught basically from the time we're old enough to think. I can speak from experience here. When I first considered myself a communist, I considered myself a Trotskyist. Please don't expel me, guys. It was not for long, I grew up. But I think this is true of a lot of young communists. They like anti-capitalism, but they don't like the big bad wolf that is Joseph Stalin. It is important that we target these young trots for radicalisation, not leave them to be hoovered up by some rancid trot group, which will spit them out in 2 years' time as an exhausted neoconservative. A trot to neoconservative pipeline is very well documented. I mean, Tony Blair called himself a Trotskyist when he was a kid, for Christ's sake.
Is he not still a Trotskyist?
It's hard to tell. As young people, we must recognise that our choice now is not really between socialism or capitalism. It is, in Engel's words, between socialism or barbarism. And in order for us to achieve socialism, we must learn from the pioneers, from those who set sail in uncharted water, in an attempt to build a society, and none can be considered more pioneering and more bold in their journey than Joseph Stalin. I'd like to end with a quote from Stalin. I'm sure you won't complain. That I think is relevant to the points I've discussed here. In 1943, Stalin said to his friend and comrade Molotov, "I know that after my death, a pile of rubbish will be heaped on my grave, but the wind of history will sooner or later sweep it away without mercy. Let us usher in that wind."